I've come to believe with all my heart, with every fiber in my being, that no matter the stories and particularities of our lives and stories and family dynamics, where we come from, the languages we speak, that within each of us as human beings reside this incredible, great pull to connect. You feel that? Whether it's conscious or unconscious, right? There's this, we come into the world with it, this great pull to connect. Now, you all certainly know that here in this church. I sense it's why you come to this place, to connect in some way. It's maybe why you have made the decision this morning to try out a new church. Where might I connect? Are your people my people? Do you see me? This is the bedrock of our Unitarian-Universalist beliefs. Every value, every principle, source, and those principles, sources, values, they have been rewritten and rewritten and rewritten over hundreds of years. Affirmations of faith, covenants, all of them are attempting with different words, new words, change this word out for this word, to capture the spirit of this great pull of connection that we are grounding our faith in and figuring out how to live by. Mother Teresa, and I've brought this to you before, she diagnosed the world's ills in this way. We've just forgotten that we belong to each other. Father Gregory Boyle, this is a man whose life and ministry has been totally devoted to the rehabilitation of Los Angeles gang members. In response to what Mother Teresa wrote, said that kinship is what happens to us when we refuse to let that happen, refuse to forget about belonging to one another. And that with kinship as our goal, he writes, we would no longer be promoting justice, we would be celebrating it. And this belonging to each other, kinship, heeding this great pull to connect, this is hard. It demands something of us, not asks, demands. A narrow and defended heart isn't going to get me there. And I understand what it is to live with family members or in communities where their narrow, defended hearts aren't getting them there. And I know how painful that can be. A small, conditional understanding of love, that's not going to get us there either. And we feel and experience that all the time, don't we, these days? It takes courage, and it takes vulnerability. And we humans, we struggle to be vulnerable. We struggle to have heart. That's the root of courage. We struggle to do healing work inside. And we do things with our pain that sometimes I understand, and a lot of times I don't, what some people do with their pain. It takes this courage and vulnerability and interior healing to fully glimpse the wholeness of ourselves and to then glimpse the wholeness of another, let alone the wholeness of a community or the wholeness of a nation. In Ghana, Africa, The Akan people place an enormous amount of value in the proverb of Sankofa. It depicts a bird reaching backward while its body faces forward. Sometimes it's even depicted as actually flying while looking backwards. So it's like a push-pull. Sankofa translates as to go back and fetch it or retrieve it, and signifies that it is never too late to go back for that which you have forgotten about, and that bringing forward the wisdom, the history, the stories, not only personally but collectively, is an essential tool for reconciling our present identities, restoring relationships, and knowing how to move forward more deeply connected to oneself and to each other, to the ancestors, and to future generations. It can be hard, I think, on a lot of us to know that the past shapes the present. I understand the longing to say things like, oh, the past is in the past, we're moving forward from that. I really do. Beneath that is a desire to heal and let go and just be, and that's important. But as many of you know, life and time, it doesn't move in a straight, tidy line. Life is like an ebb and flow of ocean waves, I feel. Gushing forward, receding back. Stilling, inching forward, pulling back, fast, big, choppy sometimes, other times slow, small, easy breezy, high tide, low tide. Suffering and disconnection happens when we fight this, refuse to accept it. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to try to rewrite that which we thought we knew. I get that. And when we can't seem to integrate, that's that going back and fetching the wisdom and healing that we need for today and tomorrow. When we can't seem to do that, it really does cause us a kind of ungroundedness in our present. There's an interior strife that you can feel. And we've heard a bit about the restorative justice process this morning, thanks to Danny. That was so wonderful. This practice has been freely and generously gifted, very much encouraged to white Westerners from North American and New Zealand indigenous tribes. They've relied on it for millennia to remain and return to kinship and connection in their relationships. Their belief is that when upset or harm happens in a community, from the small skirmish to a huge tear in trust, that spiritual transformation and a deepened relationship-centered justice is found through gathering everyone in a circle, speaking the shared values of the community, and offering time for everyone to speak their experience, to go back and fetch the stories and experiences, and moving around the circle with a talking piece like Danny had, the talking stick, so that there's no interrupting and that we can really listen to each other. Restorative justice circles, their aim is to create and ritualize, that's our theme this month, rituals, ritualize a space in which every participant feels safe to be their most authentic, flawed, messy selves. And with the indigenous belief, one of their deeply held values in all beings being connected, everything in the universe being connected, participants, even perpetrators of the worst kind of harm or crime, sitting in the same circle as victims or families of victims through sharing and a longing to understand the harm. Notice that Danny asked the Bears and Goldilocks, do you consent to this process? And that's important because not all do. Doesn't work if everyone doesn't consent to the process. Through sharing and a longing to understand the harm and the root of the harm, work to see that pain for one is pain for all. And that this deepening of knowing and understanding then illuminates an agreed upon pathway to reparations, or a justice that is restorative, opposed to solely punitive or retributive, which is the ground of how we understand a lot of justice making in this country. Several states, here's some good news. Several states in our country have employed restorative justice processes in their court systems, with many judges considering an offender's voluntary participation in them as mitigating factors to reduce sentences. Many cities and towns across the country are relying on nonprofit organizations who focus on restorative justice, and they bring in circles including police officers, local legislators, leaders, school boards, and beyond to move through these kinds of restorative justice, transformative healing circles. It's awesome. There's a phenomenal one in Arlington, just a stone's throw from here. You might have also heard of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa back in 1995, led by Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. That was a court-like restorative justice process in response to decades of living with the atrocities of apartheid. This is an example of a whole, scarred nation engaging in this practice. 22,000 victims shared their stories. 7,000 perpetrators of harm spoke honestly about what they'd done. All of this speaking and listening lasted over 7 years. Desmond Tutu said at the time, "We are a wounded people because of the conflict of the past, no matter which side we stood. We all," he said, "stand in need of healing." Nelson Mandela at one point during the hearing said that, quote, "Ordinary South Africans are determined that the past be known, the better to ensure that it is not repeated. They seek this not out of vengeance, but so that we can move into the future together. Our country," he said, "is depending now on the tenets of our faith to rebuild our morality." Our Unitarian-Universalist faith also asks this, demands this of us, pulls us to connect, and asks us as a wounded people and a wounded culture to go back and fetch the whole story, face it, let it be known, and do something with this wisdom so that we too can move into the future together with a rebuilt morality. Listen to these words of our faith tradition, what we believe in, what guides everything. We honor the interdependent web of existence and acknowledge our place in it. We are all sacred beings, we believe, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all feel welcome and can thrive. We adapt to the changing world. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. Interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity, these are the tenets of our faith, and we believe that love makes all of this possible. And these aren't meant to be abstract, utopian, out there floating around platitudes. We are meant to live them and apply them to the particularities of our lives, and then out and out and out. Like Mandela, I believe that our personal healing, our country's healing, the world's healing depends upon the tenets of a faith like ours, undeniably rooted in this great pull, this great longing to connect and retrieve that which has been lost. A revered colleague of mine, the Reverend Frederick Muir, delivered a powerful address to about 2,000 UU ministers back at Ministry Days in 2013, otherwise known as the famous Berry Street essay. It happens right before General Assembly, where he boldly said this. The name of his essay was From iChurch, I like iPod, iPhone, from iChurch to beloved community. Many of us, he said, were drawn to Unitarian-Universalism because it seemed to be the church of transcendentalist individualism. Ralph Waldo Emerson proclaimed, "No law can be sacred to me but that of my nature." And this Emersonian individualism, and I love Emerson. We love Emerson. It has value. Okay. And this Emersonian individualism has become part of the American story. However, the iChurch, which centers individualism and exceptionalism, will keep us from being the beloved community. Different from individuality, and that's important. Individualism is not individuality. Different from individuality, he said, there is nothing about the ideology and theology of individualism that encourages people to work and live together, to create and support institutions that serve common aspirations and beloved principles. And I feel that we can really sense that these days. Now, our faith has changed, thank goodness, since 2013. Our theology has deepened. We've become more fluent in our faith, more articulate about how it gets put into action. We know some more things about the perils of life solely driven by I, and the healing properties of a worldview grounded in we. The urgent call of Fannie Lou Hamer, I've seen it written on many of your protest signs, who wept out loud that nobody's free until everybody's free. We UUs have gotten a bit better at believing and living this. Really. We've become more intentional about welcome and the assumptions we make about welcome. And we've begun to connect living our faith with the personal responsibility each of us have to stay in right relationship with one another and right relationship with our sacred land, understanding that our behavior has impact on others and on the web of creation, and out and out and out. Many of our churches, like us, are investing in the transformative healing work of reckoning with their whole histories, not just getting stuck in a single fixed story. We've adapted, and we see the value of going back and fetching that which has been lost and integrating it somehow. Now, I don't have the best mind for science, but Margaret Wheatley has a way of explaining quantum physics that I think works here. She writes, "The quantum mechanical view of reality strikes against most of our notions of reality. It is a world where relationship is the key determiner of what is observed. Particles come into being and are observed only in relationship to something else. They do not exist as independent things. And these unseen connections between what were previously thought to be separate entities are the fundamental elements of all creation." Wow. Our indigenous wisdom keepers from Africa, New Zealand, and North America, they know this to be true. As did our indigenous ancestors, my friends. You all came from somewhere. From what we now call England or Italy, Germany, Greece, they also knew this to be true. We have, as Mother Teresa tells us, simply forgotten that we belong to each other. This pull to connect across difference, time, identity, theology, ideology, this is what makes our UU faith subversive. I've used that word before to describe it, as well as radical and revolutionary. We love being subversive, radical, revolutionaries. The powers that be don't want this, by the way, this pull to connect. They are throwing trillions at the severing of it, the severing of the thread of human connection, seeking to separate and isolate us, instilling us with mistrust and fear of our neighbors, calcifying our hearts with hate and terror and hopelessness and blame, and deterring us from seeking the wisdom about our pasts, the whole truth. Kinship is freedom, peace, justice, awakening. And this is not where they have hedged their bets. We use, alongside, by the way, so many other faith traditions, communities, and tribes, let us not think ourselves so very exceptional. We are not the sole architects of beloved community. We are united with so many other people around the world in this delightfully mischievous and trickstery business of retying the threads of human connection, retying the threads of witness and care and healing. Yes, yes, even with those who, as progressive liberals, we are told to hate. The they that I've just mentioned. Remember, no one is free until we all are. And your pain is our pain too. You are just choosing to do something else than I would with it. And I say that to myself every day to try to make sense of the hatred and cruelty at the hands of some of my siblings in this world. Me, oh my, do we liberals and conservatives need a restorative justice circle? Danny, can you help us with that, please? When I meet you and you meet me, we do not meet in a void, says Reverend Rebecca Parker. We meet within an all-inclusive reality that supports the possibility that we can be present to one another in truth. This kind of love holds us to account, calling us to do right by one another and not to harm. We get there bit by bit, breath by breath, day by day, generation by generation, as we alone and together keep the faith, that the journey towards wholeness is possible. And I want to thank you for being keepers of the faith. I want to thank you for doing something with the wisdom, and I know for many of you it's hard-earned and through pain, maybe from what you did not get growing up, but are trying to do something with it to heal and retie the web for future generations. Thank you. I want to thank you for trying to be open-hearted pilgrims on the journey in the best way you can. And I want to thank you for being a part of retying the severed threads, for going back as best you can to retrieve that has been lost, even if it's painful. And thank you for being willing to face hard truths here, and for staying connected through those ebbs and flows. They will always be. And for attempting to face yourselves and one another with honesty and just a little bit of grace. What a thing. And what else is there but this trying and attempting here in this incubator of love and possibility? Bit by bit, breath by breath, day by day, generation by generation, keeping the faith that wholeness and healing, kinship, this pull to connect is possible. Blessed be, and amen.